Good evening and welcome to Greater Somerville for July 19th, 2011. I'm Joe Lynch. My guest tonight is a candidate for alderman from Ward 7 in the city of Somerville. She is a lifelong resident of the city, a graduate of Somerville High and of a business school, a former employee of a global airline, and currently is the manager of administrative support, student services at Tufts University. A wife, a mom, a proud grandmother, and more on the way.
And more on the way.
She is no stranger to Somerville politics, as she is the granddaughter, daughter, and wife of former Somerville alderman. An education advocate and PTA leader in the city, she lives with her husband and their bulldog, Penny, in their family home on Powder House Boulevard. It is my pleasure to welcome, for her first visit to Greater Somerville, Alderman from Ward 7 candidate, Joan Whitney Puglia. And welcome to you.
Thank you, Joe.
On a hot summer evening.
It is, but it's not too bad in here. So.
No, we toned the lights down just a little bit. We
really
did tone the lights down for you, though.
Thank you.
But, you know, I was surprised when we came in. It was so cool in here.
It was.
But we have 3 studios going tonight, so I think they cranked it up for us.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Lucky for me.
There you go. There you go. Well, welcome to SCAT.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
First appearance on SCAT TV.
First appearance anywhere on TV.
There you go. There you go. And it's easy.
My debut.
It's easy, Joan.
Oh, good.
It's easy. When you're trying to make a point to whoever's talking to you, just look at them. When you're trying to make a point to the people at home, you look at the camera.
Okay.
I don't live in Ward 7, so you can't convince me of voting for you.
And that's just fine.
There you go. There
okay.
You go. Before we start, I asked Joan if we could do a couple of public service things here and a couple of best wishes. I want to give a very, very heartfelt best wishes to Alderman Tom Taylor. As many of you know, Tom has been dealing with some health issues in the past, and last week, my information says at Brigham and Women's, he underwent surgery. He is doing well. I would ask you, if you have time, and you know Alderman Tom Taylor, 32 Vinyl Ave, drop him a note, drop him a get well card or something. Also to Bert Gay, the husband of former Mayor Dorothy Kelly Gay. Bert is now resting comfortably. 1 Avon Street is their address if you want to drop him a line. And then next week, we are well into the campaign season for the municipal election coming up in November. We do have a primary. Joan Whitney Puglia, current Alderman Bob Train, and Tatiana Ballantyne will be facing off in a primary on September 13th. So we are trying to get all of those primary candidates in to Greater Somerville. Joan is here. Next week is Tony LaFuente, who is running for alderman from Ward 4. Tatiana Ballantyne is coming in the first week of August, and then I think Alderman Train is trying to schedule himself as well. So those are my public service announcements, and I'm done with those.
Oh, good. Okay.
You are no stranger. We were talking before the show. You are no stranger to politics in the city of Somerville.
No, I'm not.
Your grandfather, John.
Yes.
Your dad,
Walter.
Husband, Andy.
Yep.
Alderman.
That's correct.
Alderman.
Yep.
And aren't you tired of it yet, Joan?
No, I am not. Much to some people's surprise, I think it's a very honorable profession, and I love this city.
Yep.
And I want to be part of the history of this city.
Yeah.
So that was one of the reasons that I decided I wanted to run for alderman.
We're going to get into some very specific issues.
Okay.
I know that you and I had chatted a little bit about these, but you know, anytime somebody makes that decision and they know what they're getting into, and you do.
And I do,
I mean,
yes.
you know, because of the family relationships, you know how hard a campaign is these days. It takes time, effort, money, organization. Most of all, it takes the stamina to work through the summer leading up to either that primary or that November.
That's true.
What really prompted you at this point to say, you know what, I'm going to do it?
Well, I think one of the biggest reasons I decided to run is that when I grew up, there was always a very robust Board of Aldermen who proposed, ordinances, proposed solutions for complex issues in the city. And in recent years, it seems as though most of the ordinances or proposals come from the executive branch.
So the mayor is making all of these proposals, the mayor's driving the agenda, and the Board of Aldermen are really just responding to him. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think it's time to have some good debate about some of the issues that have come up. And that's the type of alderman that I see myself being, is proposing real solutions to real problems in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And I see myself as an independent voice for change, that I'm not always going to go along with the crowd. In fact, a lot of times I might be the only voice out there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's time to make that change, and we just haven't seen much of that in the last, I'd say, 4 to 5 elections. So I've been very involved in the city, though, during the elections. I've worked at the various polling places. I've worked at Dilboy Post for several elections, and that was a blast as far as I was concerned, because it's a very busy polling place. I was there for the presidential election. I've worked up at Cape and Court, and I've also worked at the Brown School and the fire station on Highland Avenue. So it's given me a very good overview of a couple of things. One, how much our city has changed, but also
And continues
to change. Yeah, it's really not the city that I grew up in, 40, 50 years ago. But it's still a very vibrant city, and there's still a lot that we can do to make it a better city.
And it's not, it's funny when folks who have long-term roots here in the city of Somerville, as you know, I mean, we were talking about some of the background there, and an uncle of mine knew your dad. It's funny when we say that we see the rapid change that the city's going through, and it's not necessarily that we think it's negative. It's that there are issues that need to be addressed that we see, the long-term residents have seen, and they're being ignored sometimes.
Sometimes.
And it appears as though, in order to get a certain segment of voters, that the politicians in this city cater to that group.
Sometimes it feels that way.
It feels that way, right. So it's not necessarily that everything that's happening in the city is bad. That's not
at
what
all.
we're saying.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, I think that I can appeal to the long-term resident, but at my work at the university, when I'm working with younger professionals, and you have to learn how to compromise, how to listen carefully to the proposals that are put before you. I feel very comfortable working with 40-year-olds, 30 years old, even 20-year-olds. So I think that that's a real plus for me.
And that perspective, they're giving you a perspective of somebody who doesn't know the history of the city.
That's true.
They're just telling you, affordability is a great concern to young couples looking to establish themselves here in Somerville.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Especially when they begin to have children. A lot of the young families feel, I can't afford to stay here. Some are concerned about the school system. Our oldest daughter went through the Somerville school system. Our youngest daughter, Sarah, was in the Somerville school systems till the 7th grade. And at that point, we didn't feel that she was really being challenged. So she was fortunate enough to get into Buckingham, Brown, and Nichols over in Cambridge. And so she stayed there from the 8th through the 12th grade, and she got an excellent education there. And then she went on to Tufts University and got her degree. It would be wonderful if more people had that type of opportunity here in Somerville. I personally feel that the younger grades up through grade 4 or 5 seem to do well. I mean, I don't think we can always judge just on the MCAS score.
Right.
I think we have to look at the diversity of the population that we have here in Somerville. We're not going to be a Wellesley as far as MCAS scores go. We have a lot of first-generation families, and they work very hard, those parents. And you can see the results of that when you get to some of the children up at the high school that are going on to very prestigious private universities.
Yeah, I
So-
see. I mean, you know, I love local community television, and I watch the award ceremonies from the high school, and I see these kids going on to Yale and Harvard and Brown, and I go, good
That's
for
great.
you guys.
Good for Somerville.
you
That's
guys.
what we want.
Yeah.
That's what we want. So I realize as an alderman, probably will not have an awful lot of influence, but it doesn't mean that I won't have any.
Right.
Because I would go to the various,
Well, the school committee
The school
meetings
committee.
and some of the things that have to do with the
and the
education.
administrators.
Right, right.
And talk to them about issues that my constituents would want to pursue.
Yeah, and as you know, the board does have representation on the
They do,
Somerville
yes,
School Committee
yes.
with the president
Through the
sitting
president
there.
of the Board of Aldermen,
Yeah.
yes. So there are ways to impact the educational process as well.
Let's go into some of the major issues, very concrete major issues in Ward 7
Okay.
that you see that you can do things differently than the incumbent.
Well, I think one of the big issues is the reuse of the Powder House School, and that seems to be stalled. And it's been stalled for a while. And
As long as I can remember, since they closed it.
since they closed it, and so that's a really long time to
Yeah.
have this vacant building that we continue to have to maintain, and not have a clear picture of what we should do. I think that our current alderman hasn't really taken much of a leadership role. I know he's attended many of the meetings, but coming up with maybe better ideas as to what we might be able to do. I think that I hear people would like some green space, but they don't want condos there. We're not talking about retail. We're not talking about those types of establishments. But we do have to do something with the school. It's deteriorating rapidly at this point, and so maybe one of the alternatives would be that we would have to tear it down. And
Well, it's a cost saving. It's a capital investment for the tear down, but it's a cost saving to the city because they're no longer insuring it and
that's
maintaining
correct.
it.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, I think for the last year or two, it's been a storage place for stolen bicycles. So that's a pretty big building to have just bicycles in there.
They might have filled it. Who knows?
well,
I didn't say that, Somerville. I didn't say that.
Actually,
But
I did see the city trucks come by a couple of times, and they had to make several trips.
Yeah.
So
But there's been multiple proposals. I haven't followed it all that well. I know that there was a major study done. The mayor wanted to see, show me all the surplus buildings and property that we have in the
Yes.
city.
Yeah.
And Powder House School, the old Powder House School on Broadway, in between Broadway and Holland, was one of the issues that came up. What do
Yep.
we do with it? And I know that you have a very, very lively bunch of advocates up there in Ward 7
Yes.
that had a lot of proposals.
a lot of
A
proposals.
lot of proposals. A lot of people wanted a community center. Other people wanted it used for educational purposes. Other people wanted to rip it down and sell it because it adds to the tax roll. So where did it finally land in terms of the community input? Did you make up your mind at some point during those community meetings as to what the best use would be?
Well, I would like to see some green space preserved. Right now, it's mostly hot top and concrete.
It's the old playground.
It's the old playground.
Right.
So something larger than that. But if we're going to do something like that, I want it to be a place where everyone can appreciate the open space. So not just another tot lot, because we actually do have the lot down on Holland Street that is pretty close to that area. And the Veterans Playground up on North Street is being looked at to be rehabbed. So more like an open space, maybe a picnic area, that type of thing, where anyone could go and spend some time with their family. I'd like to think of it as some small piece of it would be like the lovely lawns that they have up at Tufts University, where you see a lot of families up there.
Yeah. A lot of Somerville families.
A lot of Somerville families,
Right.
yeah. Actually, there's more Somerville families than Medford families that go there. There's also the lot down at the corner near the Rotary that a lot of Somerville families with young children use. So something like that would be a good alternative for that spot. I would prefer not to see high rises. But I think the most important piece is that the residents of Ward 7's voices are heard before any final decision is made. And that's not the way that it's happened before, but I think that it's a good way to go with the Powder School.
Yeah, and no offense to the mayor, but I think, what the mayor typically looks at is balancing the budget.
Of course.
And, as the CEO, he may have looked at it immediately and said, how much can we get for this land?
Yes.
If we sell it, how much can we get for
Yeah.
it? And that's a natural course. Any CEO will do that. If we sell it, here's what we get, one-time revenue. That's
Yes.
it. But then if it gets developed, you get tax revenue from the condos or the business entity that goes in there. However, I think the city has to look at all of that. Then they have to look at, well, what do the residents of this city, of this area, really want?
Correct.
Yeah, and I think that's what you're saying is.
I think that the input is very valuable, and I know that most of the residents feel as though they're not being heard. I think they feel as though, well, they're listening right now, but they're really going to do what they want to do, and they don't really care what we want. So I would want to take a more aggressive role in resolving that, and within a short period of time. I'm not looking to go in January and still a year from January wonder what's going to happen here. We'd like to have some answers.
You'd want to go in and make concrete proposals to the mayor and say this is what the community in the
I would, and
area
I would like to see maybe some type of a referendum on the ballot for the residents of Ward 7, so that they know that they were heard.
Well, let's get into a couple of other things. You touched briefly on, your career at Tufts University.
Yeah.
Would you? And I asked this question. It's not an unfair question. I asked this question of somebody who was running for alderman at large a couple of years ago when I hosted one of the political forums down here. The relationship between Tufts University and the city of Somerville typically is managed by two people. It's managed by the mayor and it's managed by the Ward 7 alderman, because that's where the vast majority of the property touches. Would you be in favor of a town-gown council that still represented, somebody representing the mayor, somebody representing the board of aldermen, but it appears to me that sometimes when there are issues that arise between the city and the university, that they leave it up to the ward alderman up in 7 to take care of the issue. And sometimes it appears adversarial. Do you think it's a better idea to have some kind of a council that's established? Because I know there are other cities and towns that do that. Cambridge does it with all their universities. And
I think it would be something that I could entertain and feel very good about. I think that for the most part, Tufts has been a good neighbor, but there's always room for improvement in any relationship. So if we could maybe work with someone from the Tufts Police on a non-adversarial committee.
Right.
And maybe someone
taking proactive steps.
Yeah. Okay. Even when there are road races or other events at the university, there are some neighbors that hear about all of them, and then there are a lot of other neighbors that don't hear about anything.
Right.
So opening the communications between the university and the mayor and the alderman, I think, would be a good thing. I think we have to include people from student affairs.
Yeah.
I do know that more and more of the students that are living off campus have moved to Medford. I think part of that was the crackdown that the police have used in Somerville. I can certainly speak of my own experience where I have students that live next to us. And I didn't hesitate to call the police. I called them at least 4 times last summer. And then I went over and introduced myself to the students. And I said, I don't want to have this kind of relationship with you.
Did you say I'm the lady that called the cops on you?
Yes, I did, yeah. And there I was, out with my jammies on at 2 in the morning saying, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And I told them that I work at the university.
Yeah.
And I said, this is really a bad example to set. for students that go to this university.
Yeah.
And you can do better.
See, we get very quiet, tough students living in Ward 5.
Isn't that nice?
We have a lot of tough students who live in Ward 5, and we've never had issues at all. So
Well,
I
sometimes
didn't
the
want
closer
to.
you are to the university, the noisier you become because you think you're on campus.
Right. Teal Square happenings. I know you were mentioning that you had some discussions with some of the business entities about what's happening in Teal Square.
I actually met with Steve Mackey today from the Chamber of Commerce, and we had a pretty good discussion, and we talked about the fact that some of the small businesses, most of the small businesses actually, not only in Ward 7 but in the city, are struggling with the fact that there is not much foot traffic, especially during the day. So that really limits the amount of time that they have to
Make
any money and profit.
Right.
So.
It's usually the smaller commercial districts. I mean, Davis and Union do
They're pretty
a
robust.
fairly good job
Right.
with foot traffic, sustaining the smaller businesses. They have a much better connectivity to Cambridge
Yes.
and some of the business folks who work in Cambridge, where Teal, Ball, Magoon, Gilman, Lower Broadway.
Once you get up to the Tab building, the foot traffic tends to dissipate.
Right.
So, but you also notice that at the other end of Davis Square, further down Elm Street, where some of those businesses have turned pretty frequently.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's hard to do well.
Yeah.
The economy is tough. It's not getting any better, and some of the jobs that are available are either restaurant or retail.
Yeah.
And that's not really helping the city.
You said the key word. Somebody asked me on a panel that I had served on a while ago. They said, these smaller squares, the merchants are up in arms. They think it's the parking policy. We could spend a whole evening about the parking policy, but you've written about it.
Yes, I
You've
have.
stated about it on your website.
Yes.
So I think we're going to let that go for
that's fine.
you to the voters. But, they asked me about it, and I said, look, what it comes down to for me is this. We should have many more people working in this city than we do.
We should.
And it is a severe lack of commercial business development, offices,
Yes.
R&D. All of that stuff contributes. This place would be booming. Magoon would be booming. Ball, Teal, all of these places would be booming if we had more office workers who have to have lunch at noon or 1 o'clock.
That's correct.
Our bars and our restaurants appear to be doing okay at night, but it's that daytime business where it falls off the cliff. So I'm not making the pitch to you. I'm just saying that's...
I hear you, and I know that you've advocated for the Magoon Square area for a long time and talked about the fact that foot traffic means no business.
Right.
If we don't get it, then,
That's right.
then the businesses aren't going to succeed.
That's right. So, let's move quickly because I know there are a couple of things. Where do you think, and I did give you this question, so they don't call it the hot set for nothing, Joan. Where do you think the mayor needs to focus in the future?
Okay.
Because you would be serving on the legislative body.
Yes.
He's in the executive. Sometimes those two don't meet. And I don't know of one of the aldermen who serves up there currently that hasn't had a thing to say about, well, if I was mayor, I wouldn't do it that way. But where do you think he needs to focus?
It's always easier to say, if I was.
Absolutely.
So, but I think what we need to do is we really need to look to see and identify what are the essential services that the city needs and how are we using our resources. And I say that because I've just gone through a process up at Tufts where we had to look and make sure that we were getting 35 hours a week out of our employees. Not 32, not 30, but 35. And that and what resulted from that is basically my department, where I have 10 women who are all cross-trained, and so we're moving forward all of the time, and people can still take vacation, but really using our resources, our human resources, the best that we can. And, a suggestion to just throw out there might be should we be looking at maybe combining some of the departments that we have? So
Some consolidation
Some consolidation.
process. Yeah.
No offense to the election department, because Lord knows they've certified me and all of that, so I'm very happy with them. But maybe looking at incorporating them with the city clerk's office, because it is the city clerk is a person that would be responsible for keeping city records.
And the voting record is
And
a
the
city
voting record
record.
is a city record.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying that people would necessarily lose their job, but through attrition
And there's economies of
and,
scale.
and the economy of scale, so that would be one example.
Okay.
I have several other examples, but I think I'm going to leave it at that one for tonight.
Well, we've probably got 2 minutes, so I
can't believe the time went so
I was
quickly.
being unfair to you. You have been a very, very outspoken critic of some of the more recent traffic and parking policies in
Yes,
the city.
I have.
In a nutshell, Joan, would you be in favor, should you be successful in September and then in November, would you be in favor of starting to get the Board of Aldermen to put pressure to roll back some of these prices?
Yes, I would. And the first one would be that I don't think that we should be paying another increase on the resident parking permit. I think I've done some homework, and there is really not another city in town in the area that charges $30. So, yes, that would be one of the first things that I would propose.
And they've just gone up on all other licenses and
That's right.
fees and permits and all the rest of them.
It's become a piggy bank for the city.
Well, yeah. I mean, they're limited by the tax that they can levy on the property
But
taxes.
if we looked at consolidation of services, and we looked at what was really and truly essential, then I think that we could save some money that way and not have to burden our residents. The other thing that I would advocate for is to increase the visitor parking permit to 7 days rather than 2. 2 days is really tough. There's a lot of families that have members from out of town, and they come to visit, and they're luckier than 2 days.
If you have issues with traffic and parking, this might be the person you want to go to her website. Joan, very quickly, your website.
My website, and I really do know it by heart, but it's
You better.
It's www.joan4, the letter 4, ward7.org. And I would like to end by asking you for your vote as Alderman for Ward 7 on Tuesday, September 13th, and I will be the second name on the ballot.
Excellent. We're going to continue bringing candidates to you. I want to thank my guest tonight, Joan Whitney Puglia. She is a candidate for Ward 7 Alderman in the city of Somerville. With that, thanks for joining us tonight. Stay safe, stay informed. See you next week.